You think you need motivation to change your life, but 2,000 years ago, Seneca proved that motivation is for the weak. What you really need are these 10 brutal Stoic laws that will destroy your excuses and rebuild your mind from scratch. While billions of people waste years on therapy and shallow self-help, the principles that saved gladiators from madness and emperors from despair remain hidden in ancient texts, waiting to transform those brave enough to apply them. Get ready to discover why these 10 laws were considered too dangerous for the masses and how they'll make you unstoppable. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your like and comment from what part of the world you're watching, because now I'm going to tell you everything. Do you want a calmer mind without pretending problems do not exist? What if there were a simple way to stop bleeding energy on things you cannot steer and put all your horsepower into the few levers that actually move your life? The law of control is brutally simple. Your domain is what you feel, what you choose, and what you do. The weather, the stock market, a boss's mood, and the internet's noise live outside your domain. This is not a moral judgment, it is a practical map. When you act as if the outside zone belongs to you, stress spikes, your decisions blur, and your day drifts. When you keep your hands on your side of the line, clarity returns. You stop negotiating with reality and start steering your actions. People often push back on the part about feelings. They say, "I do not choose my emotions." True, the first surge often arrives uninvited. A text lands, your chest tightens, your jaw locks. That first wave is automatic, but the second wave is yours. You can name what you feel, decide whether to feed it, and redirect your attention. Over time, those choices shape the intensity and duration of your emotions. Owning your feelings does not mean you never get angry or anxious. It means you claim responsibility for what you do with those states. You stop acting like a hostage and start acting like a host. The hardest move inside this law is emotional detachment from outcomes you cannot control. It can feel cold at first, like you are caring less. The reality is the opposite. You care in ways that give you leverage. You care about the quality of your work, your preparation, your standards, your recovery, your honesty. You stop attaching your identity and mood to results that depend on other people and random events. You show up fully, do the thing, and let results arrive on their own timeline. That shift alone can halve your anxiety because your mind no longer cycles through what-ifs that you cannot answer. To make this real, use a daily inventory. It is fast, low-tech, and ruthless in the best way. Take a sheet of paper or a small card. Write the situation at the top in a short sentence. Draw a line down the middle. On the left, write what is mine to control. On the right, write what is not mine. Be specific, concrete, and short. Then pick 1 to 3 actions from the left side and commit to them today. That is it. The point is not to create art. The point is to train your brain to cut the world into usable and unusable levers every single day, so the habit becomes automatic under stress. Here is how it looks with a job interview. Situation: interview on Thursday morning. On your side. Preparation on the roll, mock answers, questions for the panel, sleep, outfit ready, travel route, arriving early, water bottle, your presence and listening. Not on your side, who else applied, the interviewer's preferences, the final decision timeline, the company's internal politics. Choose your actions. Rehearse answers for an hour today. Confirm directions. Set clothes out tonight. Lights off by 10. Then stop trying to rehearse what the panel will think. You already know that is outside your circle. Let it go. You will walk into the room calmer because you made the investment where it pays. Try the same with a tense conversation. Situation: conflict with a teammate about deadlines. On your side, your tone, your timing, the facts you bring, how you handle interruptions, the clarity of your proposal, an invitation for them to respond. Not on your side. their defensiveness, whether they apologize, their history, their boss's expectations. Actions. Write a brief agenda with 2 facts and 1 request. Schedule a meeting at a quiet time. Open by acknowledging the shared goal. Keep your voice slow, even if they escalate. You may not leave best friends. You will leave having honored your standards and protected the project. That is victory inside your circle. Consider creative work or product launches. You own the depth of research, the draft quality, the edit cycles, the deadline you set for yourself, the cadence of publishing, the integrity of your claims. You do not own the algorithm, discovery timing, or whether a post goes viral. If you let the outside zone run your mood, you will start chasing tricks and lose the craft. If you measure what you control, you can keep producing at a high level for years, which is how results stack. When you do this inventory daily, something important happens in your thinking. Many of us have a habit of catastrophizing. That is the reflex to imagine the worst and replay it until it feels inevitable. The inventory interrupts that loop. Catastrophizing feeds on vagueness. The inventory forces specificity. You name the situation, divide it cleanly, and pick actions. Your mind shifts from prediction to preparation. The anxiety does not vanish, but it stops multiplying. You conserve energy for actual moves instead of running simulations you cannot influence. Over time, you will notice that your default question changes from "what if this fails" to "what can I do next?" Feedback is where this law really earns its keep. You will get feedback that is helpful and feedback that is static. When someone tells you your pacing was slow in a presentation and points to the section where they got lost, that is a signal you can use. You can tighten that section and rehearse transitions. When someone says you are boring, full stop, that is noise. There is no action in that statement except wounded pride. Your job is to mine for the signal and discard the noise. You do not need to fight the person who gave you useless feedback. You just do not carry it, and when applause comes, you appreciate it briefly and go right back to your internal measures. That keeps you from becoming a puppet pulled by praise and blame. How do you measure progress under this law? Track what you can actually do. Count days you completed your inventory. Note moments you caught a worry and turned it into a concrete step. Rate the clarity of your decisions at the end of the day with a simple sentence on why you chose what you chose. Keep a short log of actions completed under pressure. You are training consistency and clarity, not hunting for approval. This kind of record builds trust in yourself. It is quiet, but it compounds. None of this is magic, and you will not execute it perfectly. There will be days you spend an hour trying to manage someone else's opinion in your head. When that happens, run a reset. Pause and breathe slowly for a minute. Put the situation back on paper. Redraw the line. Choose one action on your side and do it right away, even if it is tiny. That tiny action reclaims your agency. You will feel the pressure drop because you stepped back into your circle. This law scales to teams. You do not control a team's output alone, but you do control the clarity of the brief you give, the standards you uphold, the resources you request, the feedback loops you set, and the accountability you model. You do not control whether someone on another team delays a dependency. You do control how early you ask, how often you confirm, and whether you build a fallback plan. When teams adopt this mindset, meetings move faster because people stop arguing about wishes and start committing to actions. The mood changes from complaining to building. People sometimes worry that detaching from outcomes means you will lower your ambition. The opposite is more likely. Attachment makes you timid. You avoid risks because your identity is tied to the result. Detachment frees you to push hard because a miss does not destroy you. You can be peacefully aggressive with your responsibilities, pushing your work to a high standard while staying serenely indifferent to interference. That does not mean you ignore obstacles. It means you treat them as constraints, not as insults. Language matters here. Catch yourself when you say, "I need them to understand," or "I must make this go viral," or "I have to get this promotion this quarter." Translate those lines into control language. I will present clearly and follow up with notes. I will publish on a steady schedule and improve each draft. I will document my impact, ask for feedback, and keep building value. That switch in verbs sounds small, but it changes your posture from pleading to acting. It also makes decisions easier because you can compare options by asking which one gives me more control over my inputs. There is a mental trick that helps when anxiety spikes before a big event. Picture two circles on a table in front of you. In the first circle, place everything you can do today. In the second circle, place everything you cannot. Sit with it for a minute. Then stand up and touch only the first circle. It may feel silly, but physicalizing the distinction calms the mind. You are reminding your body that the job is to act, not to wish. Use small rituals to support the habit. In the morning, do the inventory before you open your inbox. Later, when you get feedback, repeat a quiet line to yourself. Take the signal, dump the noise. In the evening, write one sentence about a moment when you let go of something you could not control, and one sentence about an action you took on your side. These tiny repetitions train your nervous system to default to the law under pressure. Expect edge cases, health scares, family crises, abrupt changes at work, and public events can overwhelm the neat line between your circle and the outside. In those moments, the law still holds, but your actions shift. You focus on support, communication, logistics, care, and boundaries. You give yourself room to feel without letting the feelings run your schedule. You ask directly for help where others have control and accept that not every story ends the way you want. Owning your response is not the same as pretending pain is good. It is refusing to let pain write your whole identity. It helps to notice the language of helplessness and cut it at the root. Phrases like, "There is nothing I can do," often hide at least one action that is still yours. Maybe the move is to learn, to plan, to rest, to document, to escalate, or to leave. If you truly have no action, the move is acceptance, which is also a choice. Acceptance is not surrender. It is alignment with reality, so you can stop wasting energy fighting a wall and start saving strength for the door. The law of control does not require special tools or long meditations. It asks for honesty and repetition. You practice drawing the line daily. You act on your side. You let the rest be. As days turn into weeks, you will notice a shift. You spend less time rehearsing other people's lines in your head and more time improving your own. You stop scanning for perfect conditions and start building under whatever weather shows up. Your mood stabilizes because it is no longer wired to external swings. Your best work becomes more frequent because the process is sturdy. Most people never test the ceiling of their potential because half their effort leaks into fantasies and fights with reality. The law of control plugs that leak. It does not eliminate hard days. It does not promise constant wins. It offers something better than a guarantee. It gives you a method for using your power fully, every day, without wasting yourself on what you cannot move. That is the psychological armor you have been looking for. Not a shield that hides you, but a frame that keeps you upright when chaos rattles the room. Treat this as a craft. Own your feelings by choosing what you feed. Own your choices by writing them down and doing them. Own your actions by measuring consistency and clarity. Let outcomes arrive when they arrive. When feedback comes, take the part you can use and leave the rest on the floor. Keep repeating the cycle. The result is a mind that is hard to bully and a life that reflects what you actually control. That is the win you can bank every single day. When you stop trying to steer what is not yours, the next move is deciding how to treat whatever shows up anyway. Some days your effort pays off cleanly. Other days you do everything right and still get a messy outcome. That is where loving your fate becomes practical rather than poetic. It is a choice to meet each event as raw material you can use, not as proof that the world is rigged against you. Amor fati sounds fancy in Latin, but the behavior is simple. You greet reality as it arrives and ask, how do I turn this into training? Not in a fake, cheerful way, not by pretending pain is pleasant, and not by letting people walk over you. It means you decide that every situation contains at least one way to practice a virtue and produce value. You anchor yourself in action instead of resentment. The cleanest way to install this mindset is to build a small reflex. When a plan cracks, you say a short phrase out loud, something like good, or use it, or assignment accepted. The phrase is not magic. It buys you a few seconds of calm and points your mind toward work instead of complaint. Right after that, you ask a direct question. What does this moment demand from me? Most of the time, the answer is one of a few old-fashioned words that still carry weight. Courage when something scary must be faced, fairness when someone is owed a clean deal, self-control when your impulses want to take the wheel, and practical wisdom when you need to choose the next best step with incomplete information. You pick one of those, then design one concrete action that expresses it within the reality in front of you. Take a travel mess many people know too well. You get to the airport and your flight is cancelled. You do not need a philosophy seminar. You need a move. You greet the situation with your phrase, decide the virtue is calm problem solving, and act. You call the airline while also joining the desk line. You ask for the earliest viable seat. You request meal and hotel vouchers if a layover is required, and you send a short, clear message to people waiting for you with your updated arrival time and a plan for a remote check-in if needed. None of that turns the cancellation into a joy. It turns it into a sequence you can handle. That is the point. Now consider a creative project that flops. You worked for months, you release it, and the response is flat. Loving your fate does not mean shouting that it was actually amazing. It means you run a quick post-mortem without self-attack. You ask what worked, what missed, and what your next iteration will do differently. You cut the features that confused people, you tighten the message, and you set a publish date for the revised version. The mood might still sting, but your hands are already moving. The setback becomes part of your craft, not a stain on your identity. There is a reason this is not delusion or passivity. Passivity waits for rescue. Delusion insists the bad thing was secretly good. Amor fati does neither. It says, the event happened. Now I will extract training value and move. If the event included harm or injustice, you include that in the work. You file the complaint, set the boundary, gather the evidence, or leave the situation. You use the adversity to practice courage and fairness rather than rehearsing a grievance until it calcifies into your whole story. The emphasis is on converting energy into useful steps. A practical way to make the reflex stick is to rehearse the phrase before the day starts. You sit for a minute and say to yourself, if something breaks today, I will say, use it, name the virtue, and do one concrete thing. This pre-commitment removes debate at the moment of stress. Later, when a meeting gets pushed or a system crashes, the habit runs. You do not have to like the surprise. You just have to accept it quickly enough to act on it. That speed is the advantage. Building a backup plan on the spot is part of the same posture. When a plan fails, the replacement is not a consolation prize. It is the new optimal path given the constraints now in play. If a client pulls out at the last minute, you do not spend the afternoon crafting perfect explanations. You shortlist replacement prospects, convert your proposal into a generic template, and send a few focused outreach notes before the day ends. If a teammate gets sick before a demo, you trim the scope to the must-show features and decide what can be screenshotted instead of live. The aim is not heroics, but it is a bias for action that restores momentum. People who practice amor fati keep a small record of these conversions because memory is unfair. Your brain tends to store complaints with high resolution and bury small wins. A quick wins ledger fixes that bias. At night, you write a few lines. This went wrong. I did this. Here is the value I created or the lesson I banked. It takes a handful of minutes and recalibrates your story about yourself. Over a few weeks, you start to see the pattern. You are a person who gets knocked off schedule and then builds something usable out of the debris. That identity is earned, not imagined. Workplaces benefit from this mindset because it reduces drama while increasing learning. On teams, you can normalize the phrase and the pivot. When a dependency slips, you reframe it as an assignment rather than a verdict. You say, "We did not get the data by noon, so we will spend this block improving the slide narrative and plug the numbers in later." When a bug ships, you skip the blame hunt and write the test that would have caught it. You still run a retrospective, but it is focused on fixes, not on theater. The culture becomes one where everyone moves faster, not because they are rushing, but because they are not stuck arguing with reality. A common worry is that loving your fate will kill ambition. People imagine that if they treat every outcome as usable, they will stop aiming high. It turns out the opposite is more likely. Attachment to a specific outcome creates fear, and fear slows you down. When you treat outcomes as feedback, you can pursue big goals without making each checkpoint a referendum on your worth. You will take more shots, you will share work earlier, and you will recover faster from misses, which compounds into higher overall output. Let's ground this in a few everyday domains. In fitness, injury or a busy season can throw off your plan. The amor fati move is to redesign your training to match constraints instead of giving up. If your knee hurts, you shift to upper body and mobility work while you follow a rehab plan. If work steals your evenings for a month, you put short sessions in the morning and walk during calls. You are not pretending the loss is fun. You are harvesting what is still available, so you do not backslide everywhere at once. In relationships, arguments will happen. Loving your fate does not mean pretending you were not hurt. It means using the conflict to practice clear speech, listening, and repair. You say what happened, what you felt, and what you want to do next. You also ask what the other person needs and what boundary will keep both of you safe. Sometimes the conversion is a lesson that this bond is not healthy and you need to step away. That is still a use of the event. The key is you do not turn the moment into a long play where resentment writes the script. In money matters, jobs are lost, deals fall through, and markets swing. Amor fati pushes you to audit your skills, network, and runway the same day you get bad news. You update your resume that night, ping a few trusted contacts, and decide what temporary work can bridge the gap. You cut non-essential expenses for a while. You also look for the small upsides in the forced change, like a chance to learn a tool that increases your value. You are not waiting for perfect certainty. You are moving with the certainty you have, which is your ability to act. If you like a bit of structure, you can tie your conversion actions to the 4 core virtues without getting academic. Courage is the call when you have been avoiding a hard conversation, a doctor's appointment, or a risk that could lift your ceiling. Fairness is the call when someone else is affected by your choices, or when you need to give credit, pay on time, or share information. Self-control is the call when impulses would make the mess worse, like firing back an angry message or stress scrolling for an hour. Practical wisdom is the call when you need to choose among several decent options or avoid binary thinking. Naming the virtue keeps you from reacting purely on emotion and gives you a clean standard for your next step. Another way to support this mindset is to reduce rumination time. Set a loose threshold for how long you will sit with a setback before you act. It could be a few minutes for small stuff and a day for major events. You are not trying to rush grief or ignore real pain. You are giving yourself a window to feel without letting feeling become your occupation. After that window, you push one meaningful action into the world. Often, that first action is enough to restore a sense of traction. You will meet edge cases where loving your fate feels impossible. Health crises, betrayals, and sudden loss do not bend to tidy phrases. In those stretches, the practice shrinks to something very modest. You take care of your body as best you can. You ask for help and accept it. You keep appointments that protect your future self, like therapy, legal steps, or medical follow-ups. You let friends bring food and hold space. You avoid making permanent decisions while your system is overloaded. None of that erases the weight. It keeps you aimed at recovery, and at the smallest lever you still control. Over time, those small levers rebuild agency. Watch your language, because language trains reactions. Instead of saying this ruins everything, try this changes the plan. Instead of why is this happening to me, try what can I do with this. These are not positive affirmations. They are steering commands. They turn your attention toward the part you can influence. With repetition, your nervous system learns not to jump straight into doom and instead to scan for options. It is important to say out loud that loving fate is not the same as loving abuse or corruption. If someone harms you or others, the use of that event might be to document it, to speak up, to leave, or to seek justice. The mindset does not ask you to find a silver lining in wrongdoing. It asks you to refuse to be defined by wrongdoing and to act in ways that reduce its power over your life. You can measure whether this is working without turning it into a scoreboard. Notice how quickly you pivot from setback to the first constructive step. Notice if the time you spend complaining gets shorter. Notice if your plan B shows up faster and is less sloppy. Notice whether you are able to forgive and move on, not because anyone forced you, but because you have work you care about. These are quiet signals that you are converting more of life into usable training. One pleasant side effect is gratitude that does not feel forced. When you make a habit of turning problems into practice, you also start noticing when things go smoothly. A meeting that stays on track, a meal that hits the spot, a small kindness from a stranger, these register more fully because your attention is trained on reality, not on your expectations. You appreciate good weather without waiting for it to last forever. Over months, you become faster at recognizing the shape of a problem and the action that matches it. You apologize sooner when you are wrong because the apology itself becomes the training. You reroute plans without the extra theatrics because flexibility is now part of your identity. You build a memory bank of times you turn disruptions into learning or progress, and that bank gives you a calm kind of confidence that does not need to brag. The person who loves fate is not unbothered by life. They are deeply bothered by some things and still refuse to waste the bother. They use it. They move. They practice the virtues in front of them and take the next step that helps. That posture does not make chaos vanish. It makes you ready, and it keeps you honest. When the plan breaks, you say your phrase, you build the new plan, and you carry the lessons forward. That is how you turn everyday events, pleasant and brutal, into a steady apprenticeship that strengthens the parts of you that carry through any season. You already know how to turn a broken plan into movement. There is another layer that makes those pivots less frantic and more deliberate. Instead of waiting for surprises to happen, you can think through likely setbacks before you begin. Not to scare yourself, not to feed drama, but to strip events of their shock and set up sensible responses. That habit is called negative visualization, and it is more practical than it sounds. You imagine plausible problems, decide how you will spot them early, and pick the actions you will take if they appear. The point is calm preparation, not gloom. Here is the posture. You pick an upcoming task, a meeting, a trip, a launch, or even a normal day. You name a small set of things that could realistically go wrong. You are not forecasting the end of the world. You are scanning for ordinary failure modes you have seen before or heard about from people you trust. For each one, you identify an early sign that tells you it might be forming. Then you list what you will do if that sign shows up, and you decide your stop point if the environment turns hostile. In simple terms, you outline a backup, an indicator, and an exit. When the time comes, you are not improvising under stress. You are following a plan you already approved while your head was clear. A common worry is that this will turn you into a pessimist. The opposite tends to happen. Catastrophizing is when your mind loops on scary images without producing any moves. Negative visualization breaks that loop by converting fear into checkable steps. You are building competence, not creating dread. You are also preventing the trap of naive optimism, which is when you assume things will go fine and then feel attacked by reality. This practice makes optimism sturdier because it sits on preparation rather than wishes. Let's make it concrete with a simple scenario, a presentation. The night before, you imagine a few specific snags. The room might not have the adapter you need. The internet could be spotty. A key stakeholder might challenge your assumptions. Your throat could dry up after the first slide. You set early indicators. You will arrive early enough to test the connection and audio. You will print a short handout in case the screen fails. You will prepare a slide with backup data sources so you can reference them calmly if you get pushback. You will fill a bottle and keep it within reach. You also decide ahead of time what you will do if the projector dies and cannot be fixed quickly. You will deliver a shortened version with the handout and promise to send the deck afterward. When any of these things happen, you move without drama because you are not making it up on the spot. Travel is another place this pays off. Before you head out, you imagine a cancellation, a missed connection, or a lost bag. Your early signs are delays clustering on the departure board, weather forecast turning, or texts from the airline. You carry a small kit in your backpack with essentials for a day so that a lost bag is an inconvenience, not a crisis. You keep digital copies of key documents in a secure app. You set a rule that if a delay passes a certain threshold, you will ask for a rebooking to an alternate route instead of hoping the original plan recovers. You save contact information for your hotel and any pickup so you can update them without searching in a panic. The trip may still wobble, but you will not. If you work on products or events, the same approach scales. Picture a launch. You imagine server load spikes, a small but critical bug, or a last-minute request from a partner. You run a pre-launch checklist that includes a rollback plan, which is a clean way to revert to a stable version if needed. You define simple traffic thresholds that trigger rate limiting so your system stays up. You write a short message template for customers in case you need to explain a delay. You also define your no-go conditions, like a payment error that must be fixed before you proceed. Having these items decided in advance means your team does not waste time arguing while customers wait. You act, then you explain, and then you repair. There is an emotional dividend to this rehearsal. When the imagined problem does not occur, relief and gratitude show up without being forced. When it does occur, your body reacts less dramatically because the event is familiar. You have already pictured it and selected your move. The feeling is not numbness, it is steadiness. You do not get yanked into a shame spiral or a blame hunt. You move through the steps and preserve your energy for the part that matters. You do not need to turn this into a heavy ritual. 10 quiet minutes is enough for most days. In the morning, glance at your calendar and pick the 1 or 2 moments that matter most. Imagine the few most plausible glitches and sketch your early signs and moves. For complex projects, you can do a deeper rehearsal once a week. Write it down in simple language so you or your team can see it quickly under pressure. Keep it plain and short. Overly detailed plans tend to be ignored when things get loud. If the word checklist feels stiff, think of it as a small script. A checklist is just a short list of steps you have agreed to take in a given situation, so you do not forget under stress. The simplest version fits on a card or a notes app. One column holds the risk, one holds the early sign, another holds the action, and a final one holds the exit condition. You do not need to cover everything. You cover the most likely and the most damaging items, because those are the ones that ruin days and weeks if you ignore them. A helpful way to keep this sane is to ask about base rates before you start worrying. A base rate is a plain estimate of how often something happens in your context. You can ask peers, check your own history, or look at public data. If you have never had an entire data center fail, but you often see last-minute changes to requirements, you put more effort into handling late changes. If your history says that ambitious schedules slip by a small margin, you plan an internal buffer when you make external promises. This keeps you from spending hours on edge cases while ignoring the thing that bites you every month. After any event, a quick debrief locks in learning. You ask what went wrong, what went right, what early signs you missed, and what moves worked. You update your little script so the next run is cleaner. Over time, you build a small library of patterns that fit your life and work. This is not a binder of doom. It is a set of practical notes that reduce waste and keep you moving. You will notice that the same handful of risks show up in slightly different clothing across projects. Once you have good responses ready, your confidence grows. Health is a sensitive area where negative visualization can be protective without being morbid. If you have a medical procedure coming up, you picture the common complications, not to scare yourself, but to arrange support. You set up a ride home in case anesthesia makes driving unsafe. You stock simple foods you can eat with a tender stomach. You schedule a follow-up call and mark symptoms that should trigger an earlier visit. If results might be tough, you plan who you will call and what you will ask. If a worst-case scenario is on the table, you sketch basic decisions about work leave and who needs access to certain accounts. Taking these steps does not summon bad news. It makes sure that if it arrives, you and your circle are not scrambling. Money is another area. You imagine a sudden income drop or an unexpected expense. You decide ahead of time what you would trim first, who you would inform, and what temporary work you could take. You keep a bare-bones budget written down so you are not calculating while stressed. You maintain a small emergency reserve if you can, and if you cannot right now, you decide the first move you will make to build one when the next extra cash arrives. If you invest, you acknowledge that markets swing, and you write down how you will behave in a downturn so you are not making decisions in a hurry. Even in relationships, this kind of rehearsal helps. Before a difficult conversation, you picture the other person reacting with surprise, defensiveness, or withdrawal. You plan phrases that keep the tone steady, like saying what you observed, how it affected you, and what you propose. You decide what boundary you will hold if the discussion turns unkind, and you decide to take a break if voices rise. You set a time to revisit the topic if it stalls so it does not drift into silent resentment. This is not manipulation. It is respect for both people's limits and a way to keep dialogue constructive. It is worth naming a few mental traps so you can avoid them. Negativity bias is the mind's tendency to give more weight to bad possibilities. Availability bias is when recent vivid stories crowd out plain statistics. To keep your rehearsal realistic, you write the difference between plausible and dramatic. A plausible problem is a late delivery, a small mistake in a report, or a tech hiccup. A dramatic problem is a cascading disaster that you have never seen. You give the plausible ones your planning time. For the dramatic ones, you note basic safety steps, and then you stop. If you catch yourself spiraling, set a time limit. Feel the fear for a few minutes, write one useful action, and move on. Language again matters. When you imagine a problem, describe it neutrally. Say the code might crash under load instead of the system will collapse in shame. Say the client might ask for changes instead of they will hate it. The neutral wording helps your brain stay in planning mode. You can even rate your confidence in your plan in loose terms, like low, medium, or high, so you know whether to add another safety step or keep it light. These small choices steer your mind away from drama and toward execution. A practical tip is to tie negative visualization to natural checkpoints. Before you send a big email, pause to imagine 2 reasonable objections and write 1 clear line addressing each. Before you head to a meeting, picture 1 question you hope no one asks and prepare a simple answer. Before a trip, picture 1 logistical hiccup and solve it in advance, like how you will handle late arrivals. Making it part of your rhythm keeps it small and steady rather than heavy and rare. The last piece is about gratitude and morale. When you get through a plan and none of the problems you imagined show up, take a brief moment to notice that. Do not race past it. You prepared, and reality was kind this time. Let that register. It trains you to see both sides, preparation and luck. On the days when problems do show up, do the same after you handle them. Note that you stuck to your script or adjusted it with clear thinking. This keeps your sense of progress anchored in behavior, not just outcomes. Premeditating setbacks is not a dark art. It is a quiet discipline that lowers the emotional noise around difficulty and raises the quality of your moves. You are not trying to control everything. You are giving yourself a head start on the few things you can control when pressure arrives. Over weeks and months, you will feel the difference. You will spend less time stunned and more time executing. You will be kinder to yourself because you will see challenges as part of the path you expected, not as proof that you are cursed. That steadiness lets you aim higher with a cooler head, and it makes your days easier to carry. Preparation is good, but it gets even better when your body and mind are used to friction. If you can handle a bit of hardship on purpose, surprises land softer and you keep your hands steady on the wheel. That is the point of voluntary discomfort. You choose controlled challenges that stretch your tolerance so everyday stressors do not set off alarms. It is practical training, not performance. You are teaching yourself to do the useful thing even when conditions are not ideal. This is not about punishing yourself or chasing extremes. It is about making small, repeatable exposures that raise your threshold. Think of the annoyances that usually knock you off course. A cold morning, a tough workout, a skipped snack, a strict budget day, an awkward conversation, a boring task that needs focus. These are normal, not exotic. When you practice meeting them on purpose, they lose power over you. Your nervous system stops interpreting every pinch of discomfort as an emergency and starts treating it as background. Start tiny and tie it to identity instead of mood. If the action depends on how you feel, you will negotiate with yourself until you bail. When it is part of who you are, you simply do it. A useful way is to pick 1 or 2 non-negotiable discomforts that fit your life. Make them safe and repeat them at a steady cadence. The size should be so small that you can do them on a bad day. Over a few weeks, you scale a little. The aim is compliance, not heroics. For mornings, 1 simple exposure is cold water. You can finish your normal shower with a short burst of cold. Start with 30 seconds and build to 1 or 2 minutes over time. If cold showers are not your thing or you have health concerns, try a brisk walk before coffee, even if it is dark or rainy. The point is not to suffer. It is to show your brain that you can move your body in less than perfect conditions. Keep it short so you do not trigger rebellion. Do not add lots of rules. 1 small, reliable step beats a complex ritual you will drop after a week. Physical training is obvious ground for this. Hard workouts are discomfort by design, but the key is gradual progression and form. If you have not trained in a while, choose a basic movement and make it your daily minimum. It could be bodyweight squats, push-ups against a wall, or a slow jog that lets you breathe through your nose. Start with a number you cannot fail. Maybe it is 5 minutes of movement. Maybe it is 10 slow reps. Over weeks, increase by a little. Watch for sharp pain and stop if it shows up. You are building capacity, not trying to prove a point. If you already train, pick one session a week to push a bit past comfort, then recover well. The muscle here is not just physical, it is the habit of showing up when you would rather not. Food is another lever, but it requires care. Time-restricted eating or short fasting windows can be useful stressors for some people, yet they are not for everyone. If you are pregnant, have a history of eating disorders, are diabetic, or have other medical conditions, talk to a clinician before experimenting. If you are clear to try, begin with something small and boring, like delaying breakfast by 1 hour a few days a week, or ending eating after dinner and keeping that line firm. The goal is not to chase hunger, it is to learn that you can function with mild discomfort without turning irritable or unfocused. Drink water, keep protein and fiber steady, and stop if you feel unwell. The pride comes from doing exactly what you chose, not from doing something extreme. Money discomfort is underrated and powerful. Pick a routine that makes spending a little inconvenient. For example, declare 1 day a week a no-spend day for non-essential items, and plan groceries to make it easy. Or set a rule that any online purchase sits in your cart for 24 hours before you decide. That pause will reveal how much of your buying is impulse. You can also flip the discomfort by paying yourself first. Move a small amount to savings on payday before you see the rest. The discomfort is watching a smaller pool for daily choices. Over time, that pressure makes you creative rather than reckless. Deliberate social courage might be the most transferable practice. Most of us avoid small risks because we dread awkwardness. You can train that dread down. Decide on one daily action that nudges you closer to people or to the truth. Ask a clarifying question early in a meeting instead of waiting until the end. Offer a thoughtful compliment to a colleague's specific effort. Say no politely to a request that does not fit your priorities and suggest an alternative. Give clear feedback with respect, naming the behavior and its impact. These moves are uncomfortable the first few times. Then they get easier, and your world opens because you stop letting fear of a momentary chill dictate your day. Boredom tolerance is a quiet form of discomfort. Work that matters often feels dull in the middle. Training your focus muscle pays dividends. Try a single focus block with no switching, even if it is only 10 or 15 minutes to start. Put your phone in another room, close extra tabs, write down one outcome, and work until the timer ends. Expect restlessness. Welcome it and keep going. Add a minute next week. The skill is to produce when your brain is craving novelty. You will be shocked how often a small block clears the hardest part of a task. The nervous system adapts when you expose it to manageable stress. Think of it like teaching a smoke alarm to ignore steam from the shower while still recognizing real fire. When you choose discomfort in controlled doses, you are training the alarm. Over time, traffic, weather, small delays, hunger pangs, or criticism do not trigger the same surge. That makes you less reactive and more available to respond with intention. You save your spikes for real emergencies. There are smart guardrails to keep this healthy. Aim for consistency before intensity. If you miss a day, do not double the next day as punishment. Just resume at the last level you completed. Plan deload periods every few weeks where you keep the habit, but reduce the dose. For example, if you have been doing cold water for 2 minutes, drop to 30 seconds for a week. If you have been adding weight or distance, hold steady for a week. This prevents burnout and keeps your motivation fresh. It helps to write tiny if-then rules so your future self does not bargain. If I skip my morning workout, then I will walk at lunch for 20 minutes. If I eat dessert on a weekday, then I will add a serving of vegetables at the next meal. If I scroll social media before noon, then I put the phone in another room until dinner. These rules are not punishments. They are patches that keep your pattern intact when life gets messy. The point is to stay in motion, not to win every round. Logging your discomfort reps turns the abstract into tangible progress. Keep it simple. At the end of the day, jot down the exposure, how you felt, the decision you made, and what you produced anyway. Rate the discomfort in plain words like low, medium, or high. You might write, had a tough run in cold rain, wanted to stop at halfway, kept going slowly, finished the route. Or stomach growled before a meeting, chose water and delivered the presentation with steady voice. Or felt anxious about giving feedback, wrote 3 lines, scheduled the chat, spoke calmly. That log is evidence. On rough days, it beats motivation speeches. Safety matters. Pain is not the target. Discomfort is the target. Pain, dizziness, numbness, or anything that feels wrong is a stop sign. Chronic sleep loss is not a training tool. It is a performance killer. Do not use discomfort as a cover for neglecting care. Eat enough, hydrate, sleep, and see medical professionals when needed. Voluntary discomfort works because it lives inside a base of health, not instead of it. Environment design makes the practices easier. Set your clothes out the night before so the morning cold does not add extra friction. Keep a water bottle filled and visible if you are practicing delayed snacks. Put a small notebook where you do your evening log. Keep cash out of reach or delete saved cards if you are curbing impulse purchases. Schedule a weekly call with a friend where you both share one social courage moment. These small tweaks lower the activation energy, so you spend willpower on the discomfort itself, not on finding gear or debating whether to start. Notice how this training spills over into real moments. An urgent call comes in when you are tired, and you breathe once and answer with a clear tone because you have practiced doing things while tired. Your code gets nitpicked in review, and you take the useful parts without flaring up because you have practiced hearing criticism without stalling. A child wakes in the night and your routine breaks, but you still show up for a tiny morning rule because it is who you are. These are not dramatic stories. They are the ordinary wins that stack into reliability. There will be pushback, often from your own mind. You will hear lines like "this is silly," "this is too small to matter," or "I deserve comfort after a long day." Be friendly and firm with yourself. Small is the point, because small repeats. You are not trying to prove anything to strangers. You are building a track record with yourself. The person you need to impress is the one looking back at you when you brush your teeth. It is also okay to change the discomforts you choose. Rotate every season to keep attention fresh. Swap cold water for early walks when weather shifts. Replace a no-spend day with a skill-building hour if your budget is already tight. Trade a fasting window for a sugar-free weekday if food stress is high. The structure stays the same. Pick a controlled challenge tied to identity, keep it safe, repeat it, and log it. Consider adding one discomfort at work that raises your bar. It could be publishing a short summary of your week to your team every Friday afternoon, including one mistake you corrected and one decision you are proud of. The discomfort is in the vulnerability and the public timestamp. Or it could be blocking a daily focus hour where you do not attend meetings or answer messages. The discomfort is in holding the boundary. Over time, these moves change how people see you and how you see yourself because they channel pressure into better output. On the other side of this practice is not a person who loves pain. It is a person who is calm when things are mildly unpleasant and capable when things are genuinely hard. That calm shows up as fewer excuses and more done work. It shows up as steady tone when the room heats up. It shows up as the quiet confidence you feel when you know you can keep a promise to yourself in bad weather. That confidence gets earned in minutes a day. If you want one way to begin without overthinking, pick a pair, one physical and one social. Make the physical a tiny daily piece, like a short finish of cold water or a brisk walk, and make the social a single action on weekdays, like one honest compliment or one direct number. Do them for 2 weeks, write them down, and see how your mood and stress response change. Adjust from there. You will find your version quickly because your life will tell you where the friction is. As this becomes part of your rhythm, you will notice a new baseline. Minor discomforts stop interrupting your plans. You spend less time avoiding tasks and more time finishing them. You are kinder because you are less rattled. You can sit with boredom long enough to see a task through the middle. You can hear criticism and extract the signal because you have practiced staying put in the heat. You can choose a boundary and hold it without anger. None of this requires special equipment or public announcements. It requires small, honest repetitions. That is the training. Make discomfort a choice in simple doses, tie it to who you are, keep it safe, and write down the reps. Let the changes be quiet. Let the benefits show up in how reliably you act when it counts. Over weeks and months, you will build a tolerance that most people never test. Not because you are tougher by nature, but because you practiced on purpose. That difference compounds everywhere you show up. That steady toughness only really helps if you point it at the real problem. Otherwise, you can be disciplined, consistent, and still waste effort chasing the wrong thing. So the next move is simple and unglamorous. See what is actually in front of you. Not the version your nerves invent, not the version your hopes inflate, just the plain shape of events. Objective judgment sounds clinical, but it is the most human skill there is, because it keeps you from fighting ghosts. Here is the core idea. After something happens, separate what you sensed from the story you instantly built around it. Your eyes and ears gave you a few facts. Your mind filled the gaps with assumptions. That gap filling is normal and fast, but it often adds drama, blame, or wishful thinking. If you choose your next step based on the story rather than the facts, you multiply avoidable pain. If you pause long enough to split them, you choose better and calm down. You can do this with a piece of paper. Write the situation at the top in a short line. Draw a simple divide down the page. On the left, write facts. On the right, write story. Facts are what a camera or recorder would capture. Words said, times, dates, actions taken or not taken, numbers that are verified. Story is your interpretation, your worry, your hopes, your labels for people's motives. Keep both short, then make decisions based on the left side. You can note the right side so you do not gaslight yourself, but you refuse to let it drive your next move. Take a common example. You get a brief email from your manager that says we need to talk tomorrow. Your stomach drops. On paper, facts are simple. A manager sent an email with that exact sentence. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow at 11 in the morning. There was no additional context. The story side is where your mind runs. They are disappointed. I am in trouble. Maybe a layoff is coming. Maybe they hate my last presentation. Now look at the difference in actions those two columns suggest. From the facts, the sensible move is to prepare a short update on your current work, list blockers, and show how you are addressing them. You might also check your calendar for any relevant deadlines. From the story, the move would be panic, rehearsal of apologies, and a sleepless night. Only one of those paths produces something useful. Keep your choice on the left, or think about a sales call that ends with silence. Facts might be the call lasted 30 minutes. The client asked 3 clarifying questions. They said they would decide by next week, and they did not respond to your last joke. Story might be they hated it, or I blew it in the last part. Decisions from facts look like a short follow-up email with a recap and a deadline for a gentle nudge. Decisions from the story look like rewriting the whole deck overnight or giving up. Precision protects your energy. Labels matter because they shape your mood and your options. The wrong labels inflate noise. Try training labels that reduce heat without lying. Instead of disaster, you can say setback. Instead of hater, you can say critic. Instead of delay as doom, you can call it a buffer. This does not mean you deny costs. You can say setback, cost is 1 week, impact is medium, response is to adjust timeline and communication. Telling the truth about cost keeps you honest. Choosing cooler labels keeps you thinking. Words are tools. Use ones that lower static and leave room for action. Time helps filter what deserves your full courage. Ask how this will matter in 10 hours, 10 weeks, and 10 years. A snarky comment online fails the 10 hours test. You will forget it by tonight. It does not get your energy. A sharp comment from a teammate during a planning session might matter in 10 weeks if it signals a misalignment that will grow. That deserves a conversation. A decision about where to live or whether to switch fields will echo in 10 years. That calls for a slower process and broader input. The same issue seen through these time distances looks different. The question is quick, and it untangles small drama from big stakes. Your body can help you see cleanly. When something triggers you, your threat system tries to drive. In brain terms, your amygdala, which is your alarm for danger, grabs the controls, and your prefrontal cortex, which is the part that plans and reasons, takes a back seat. You can get the driver's seat back with slow breathing. Try inhaling through your nose for a count of 4, hold gently for a count of 2, and exhale for a count of 6. Do that for 2 to 5 minutes. The lengthened exhale signals safety. You will notice your chest unclench and your thoughts widen. Then do your facts and story split. A few minutes of breathing is not a cure for everything, but it creates the small gap where you can choose instead of react. Meditation is just a form of this gap training. You sit, you watch your breath or a simple focal point, and when your mind wanders, you notice and bring it back without scolding yourself. 10 quiet minutes is enough. Over time, you spot the moment a story arises, and you do not have to believe it on reflex. You get better at saying, "This is a thought, not a command." That creates space for objective judgment to do its job. Put this to work in daily routines without making it heavy. In the morning, preview one meeting or task that could trigger you and imagine one neutral label you will use if tension rises. At midday, if a surprise hits, take those slow breaths and write the 2 columns on a sticky note. At night, pick one event and do a tiny review. What were the facts? What was my story? What did I do next? If you want a bit of structure, you can add a line on what will matter in 10 hours, 10 weeks, 10 years. These small checkpoints teach your brain a rhythm: sense, split, label, decide. Meetings improve fast when a team makes this split. Someone says, "Users hate our feature." You ask, "What are the facts we have?" Maybe you have 5 complaints out of 500 active users after a new release. That is data, but it is not a verdict. The next move is to define what you will measure and in what time window. Maybe you add a short in-product survey for a week, or you look at completion rates daily. You also list the costs you know, like support load, and you decide what you will do if certain thresholds are hit. This is not bureaucracy. It is a way to avoid veering based on anecdotes. The tone stays respectful because you are aligning on observations and next steps instead of on blame. Biases can fog your judgment, and it helps to know a few by name so you can catch them. Confirmation bias is the urge to notice only evidence that supports your current view. You soften it by deliberately asking what would prove me wrong. Availability bias is when the most recent vivid event overwhelms dry statistics. You counter it by checking base rates, which are just simple averages of how often something happens. Halo effect is when one good or bad trait colors your view of everything about a person. You break it by judging specific behaviors rather than the whole person. You do not need to become a scientist. You just need to ask one skeptical question when your mind feels too certain too fast. Objective judgment is not cold. It is fair. It lets you admit harm without exaggeration and accept praise without getting inflated. If someone crosses a line, the fact is the behavior happened, it had an impact, and you need a response. You name it and act. You do not need to decorate it with assumptions about their whole character. If you win a contract, the fact is your proposal solved a need at a price they accepted. Celebrate, yes, and then study what worked. Detaching the story from the event reduces drama and keeps you learning. Sometimes the facts include uncertainty, and the right label is "I do not know yet." That is not weakness. It is accuracy. You can choose a small test to reduce the not knowing. You can set a deadline for a decision if waiting costs more. You can write down what you will watch for. The ability to hold "I do not know" for a little while is a mark of maturity because it prevents rushed moves that create bigger messes. Social media and rumor cycles make objective judgment harder. Many posts are designed to provoke quick reactions. If you care about the topic, slow down. Check whether the claim cites a primary source. See if multiple credible outlets agree. Notice if a clip is edited to remove context. If it is important enough to share, it is important enough to verify. If it is not important enough to verify, it is not important enough to carry in your head. This small discipline lowers your ambient stress and prevents you from becoming a repeater for noise. You can also bring objective judgment into your self-talk. Notice the words you use when you miss. Calling yourself lazy or a failure is not factual. What is factual is you did not complete the task by the time you set. The useful move is to ask why, adjust the plan, and try again. Naming the behavior rather than the identity keeps you from turning a single event into a permanent label. The goal is not to comfort yourself with fluff. It is to aim your effort at causes you can change. When decisions loom, use the time lens explicitly. If you have 2 job offers, write what matters in 10 hours, which might be commute or immediate workload. Write what matters in 10 weeks, which might be fit with your manager or team. Write what matters in 10 years, which might be skill growth and the kind of projects you will touch. Seeing the layers helps you resist shiny perks that age fast. It also helps you explain your choice to yourself later if doubts pop up. There will be moments when objective judgment feels harsh because it removes the exit of fantasy. You may want the story that someone will magically change without a boundary, or that your project is fine without feedback. Replacing that with facts can sting, but it also frees you. When you see clearly, you can act cleanly. You can set the boundary, ask for the review, or change the plan. You go to bed knowing you dealt with reality, not with a wish. Make a habit of small truth rituals. When you finish a meeting, write 1 line on what happened without adjectives. When you plan your day, write 1 thing that is most likely to matter in 10 weeks and give it a protected block. When you feel your pulse jump, do the slow breath and check what the situation actually contains. These tiny moves are repetitions. They reorganize your default from storytelling to observing and from reacting to choosing. If you want to track progress, notice whether your decisions get simpler, not easier, but simpler. Notice whether you spend less time arguing with people in your head and more time clarifying with them in reality. Notice whether you can describe a problem in a few concrete sentences. Notice whether you are using cooler labels without hiding costs. These are signals that your perception is cleaner. Clean perception lowers fragility because you are not burning fuel on illusions. When you bring this together with the earlier habits, the effect stacks. Control what is yours and name the rest. Welcome reality with a mindset that turns events into training. Prepare for likely snags so surprises are smaller. Build discomfort tolerance so your body does not hijack you. Then look at the thing in front of you as it is. From there, your next move is usually plain. You email the summary, you book the follow-up, you apologize, you say no, you rest, you escalate, you keep building, You trade drama for traction, and you trade noise for signal. That is how an ordinary day becomes lighter and more effective without any theatrics. And once you are dealing with reality cleanly, there is one more filter that sharpens every choice you make. Time is not endless. Plans are priced in hours you do not fully control, and none of us knows how many are left. Remembering that is not bleak. It is precise. It makes delays look different, and it makes your priorities rearrange themselves without a speech. When you keep mortality in view, you stop living like you have infinite rewrites. You pick what matters and you do it with a steadier hand. Think of it like this. Every day you are trading a limited slice of life for something. When you forget that limit, it is easy to hand over hours to arguments, scrolling, or work that does not move the needle. When you remember it, procrastination loses a lot of its leverage. The thought of later becomes less convincing because you see how fragile later really is. You also get less impressed with noise. The meeting that should be an email becomes an email. The apology you have been delaying becomes a call today. Love, craft, and service move to the front row because those are the pieces that actually hold up when the clock is visible. This does not mean racing through days like someone chasing a deadline. It means finishing well as you go. A practical way to practice this is to build small daily endings. At work, close loops before you leave. If you touched a project, write a short note in the doc about what changed and what is next. If you delegated something, confirm who owns the next step and by when in one plain sentence. If you led a meeting, send a brief recap the same day with decisions and owners. These tiny endings are not about perfectionism. They make your work survivable for other people if you are out tomorrow, and they make it easier for you to restart in the morning without hunting for your place. In conversations, the same principle applies. Finish a talk like it could be the last time for a while. Say thank you when you mean it, out loud, with a specific reason. If you owe someone an acknowledgement or an apology, do not wait for a perfect moment. Use the next adequate moment. It takes a handful of seconds to send a text that says, "I appreciated your help today," or "I was short with you earlier, and I am sorry." The point is not drama. It is basic hygiene for relationships, and it keeps regret from piling up in a corner. There is a weekly version that keeps your calendar aligned with who you want to be. Once a week, map your time against your eulogy rather than your inbox. That sounds heavy, but it is simple. Imagine what you hope the people who actually know you would say about you at the end. Not catchy quotes, but plain traits. Maybe they say you were dependable, generous with your craft, fun to be around, and brave when it counted. Now, look at the week in front of you and put at least one action on the calendar that matches each of those traits. If dependable matters, block time to finish the core responsibility you have been avoiding. If generous matters, schedule an hour to mentor someone or to document a process so others can use it. If being fun to be around matters, plan a dinner you will cook, a walk you will take with a friend, or a night without devices. If bravery matters, pick the hard conversation and put it on the schedule with a simple agenda. This is not about building a highlight reel. It is about making sure your time reflects your values, at least once per week, on purpose. Mortality is also a solvent for comparison. When you remember that everyone you see online and in your neighborhood is also on a clock, someone else's highlight does not sting the same way. The scoreboard that matters at the end is not followers or titles. It is the set of lives you improved, the craft you built honestly, the care you gave, and the promises you kept. That scoreboard cannot be bought. It has to be earned in small actions done consistently. Keeping that in view makes applause feel like weather, pleasant but not a plan. It also exposes how absurd it is to live for recognition that will end in silence anyway. You can still enjoy compliments and celebrate milestones. You just do not let them determine your direction. If you want to make this practical without turning your days into ceremonies, try a 5-minute closing ritual at the end of each day. pick one person to thank, one decision you will carry to tomorrow, and one thing you will put down. The thank you can be a quick message. The decision can be a single line at the top of your to-do list. The thing you put down might be a worry you cannot act on until a specific date. Write that date and leave it. This small ending cleans the mental desk and reduces the odds that you will waste your evening rehearsing conversations. On a monthly or quarterly scale, it helps to review your commitments with a mortality lens. Ask what you would stop doing if you had 1 year to live. Ask what you would double down on, then make modest adjustments now, not dramatic ones later. Maybe you step away from a committee that gives you little purpose and use that hour each week to teach your child a skill or to study a tool that will actually move your work. Maybe you add a recurring visit to a relative or a standing lunch with a friend. The point is to move your actual calendar toward the life you claim to care about. There are also simple administrative decisions that protect the people you love. None of this is glamorous, but it is part of remembering that days are finite. Have a list where someone you trust can find the essentials if you are unavailable. Basic contacts, medical preferences, important accounts, and where you keep key documents. If you have dependents, sort out guardianship paperwork early. If you keep your work in digital tools, leave clear notes so a teammate can step in. This is not paranoia. It is kindness. You do not control outcomes, but you can remove chaos for others if life swerves. Notice how mortality can soften you at the same time it sharpens you. You become more fierce where it counts because you see how few chances you have to do the right thing. You become gentler where it matters because you see how everyone else is carrying their own invisible countdown. The barista making your coffee, the coworker who is distracted, the driver who cut you off. Each has a finite number of mornings left, too. That awareness does not excuse bad behavior, but it can lower your temperature. You can set a boundary without contempt. You can let small slights drift by because you are saving your courage for something worthy. When it comes to creative work, remembering death clears a lot of noise. You stop hoarding drafts. You finish things and release them, knowing that perfect is a moving target you will not hit anyway. You collect feedback that helps you grow and ignore takes aimed at stalling you. You publish on a cadence that respects both your craft and your life. The urgency is not frantic. It is respectful. You are delivering the best work you can with the time and energy available, then recovering well so you can do it again. If you struggle with procrastination, mortality gives you a simple test. Ask whether delaying serves anyone you care about, including your future self. Most of the time, the answer is no. Then make the first step very small and immediate. Open the document and write 3 lines. Fill out the top of the form and book the appointment. Pack the first item for the gym. When time is visible, starting becomes an act of respect. You stop telling yourself you work best under pressure and start telling yourself the truth, which is that future you deserves better conditions than a last-minute scramble. There is also a way to bring this into family life without turning dinner into a lecture. Make room for endings. If you leave for work before others wake up, leave a note sometimes, not a novel, just a line that says, "I love you," or "good luck on your test." If you come home late, still do the small things that create cohesion, even if it is 5 quiet minutes on the floor with a child or washing dishes while your partner takes a breath. If you argue, repair the same day whenever possible. Not everything can be fixed in an evening, but many rifts are smaller the next morning when someone took the initiative to say, "I care about you and I want us to figure this out." Your health choices fit here too. You do not need to become a monk. You can ask whether your habits respect the time you hope to have. Sleep is not optional. Movement is not a luxury. Checkups are not chores to avoid. None of this guarantees a long life. It just increases the odds that the time you have is usable. It is hard to do meaningful work or be present with people you love if you are constantly exhausted and reactive. Treat care as a duty, not a hobby. Put it on the calendar, honor it, and forgive yourself when you miss while starting again the next day. When grief actually hits, the practice shifts. You do not need slogans. You need space, help, and basic routines that keep you afloat. Remembering death in advance does not make loss painless. It does make you less surprised that it is part of life. It can guide you to say what needs saying while you still have the chance, to be there for others without waiting for perfect words, and to take the practical steps that help everyone through the fog. Even then, keep your gear light. Eat, hydrate, sleep when you can, walk a little, and accept help. Let people show up for you. Let paperwork be messy for a while. Come back to craft and service when you are able, not before. There is a small trick that makes this lens stick without dragging your mood down. Pair the reminder of finitude with gratitude in the same breath. When you note that time is limited, immediately name something you are glad to have experienced today. A laugh at lunch, a solved bug, a clean run of code, a quiet street, a good email. This stops the reminder from turning into gloom and turns it into fuel. You remember why you are doing any of this in the first place. Compare less by shifting the questions you ask yourself. Instead of "Did more people notice me this month?" ask, "Did I make more people's days easier?" Instead of "Did I outpace someone else?" ask, "Did I uphold my standards and learn something real?" Instead of "Am I behind?" ask, "Am I putting my limited time into the few things that make my life and the lives around me better?" Those are questions you can answer with action today. They are also the questions that add up to a life you would be proud to have lived if you had to account for it sooner than you hoped. Bring your team into this without making it awkward. Normalize clean handoffs, humane schedules, and real vacations. Refuse to glorify grind that burns people out. Help each other leave on time. Encourage people to use their days off and to log out without guilt. Protect deep work so you can all go home earlier. Do debriefs that capture lessons quickly, then move on. A team that respects time tends to produce better work because urgency is used sparingly and for real priorities. On your own, build small checkpoints that keep you honest. At the start of a week, write a short note to yourself that you would be comfortable reading aloud to someone you respect. It can be one paragraph about where you will put your best hours. At the end of the week, read it and jot what actually happened. Do not shame yourself. Adjust. Over months, you will see patterns. You will notice where you leak time and where you create value. You will get braver about cutting entire categories that do not matter and kinder about investing in ones that do. Remembering you will die is not morbid. It is a clean way to keep your life aligned with what you claim to value. It quiets comparison, kills a lot of procrastination, and changes how you end each day. It makes you more direct in conversations and more reliable in work. It turns "thank you" and "I am sorry" into normal sentences rather than rare events. It builds a calendar that looks like the kind of person you want people who know you to describe when you are not in the room. It makes you fierce about what counts and gentle about what does not. And it lets you put your head down at night with a lighter mind because you are not pretending you have eternity. You are using the time you have with care. When you keep time's limits in view, priorities stop wobbling. The open question then is how to behave when the moment actually arrives. That is where virtues turn from nice words into practical guidelines. You do not need fancy theory here. You need a way to decide under pressure that keeps your hands clean and your work useful. Stoicism boils that down to 4 habits you can practice in plain life. Courage is doing the right thing even when you feel fear or cost. Justice is fairness, giving people what they are owed and dealing straight. Temperance is self-control, steering appetites and emotions so they do not run your day. Practical wisdom is choosing the best available move with the information you have, not the move you wish you had the circumstances to make. Together, they form an operating system for action. If this sounds abstract, translate each virtue into one or two behaviors you can execute today. Courage might be telling the truth that makes you nervous, asking for feedback that might sting, or stepping into a task you have avoided. Justice might be paying on time, giving credit publicly, and refusing to gain from someone else's confusion. Temperance might be closing your laptop at the hour you promised your family, skipping gossip even when it is juicy, or holding your tone steady when you could score a point. Practical wisdom might be picking one priority and finishing it before checking messages, or saying no to a shiny request that does not move your main work. The point is to anchor virtues in tiny decisions you can count. A useful way to act on virtues when situations are messy is to ask a few quick questions that break ambiguity. What is the courageous move here? Who is owed fairness right now? What appetite or impulse must I restrain? What is the wisest use of my limited time? You do not need a workshop. You just pause for a breath and run those questions in your head. Usually one answer will stand up and guide your next step. You send the email that tells the truth without drama. You credit the teammate who did most of the heavy lift. You hold back from refreshing metrics and instead work on the part customers will feel. You block an hour to write the proposal instead of taking another meeting. To make this stick when you are tired, write a few if-then rules that bind your future self. If a conversation turns into gossip about someone who is not present, then I will steer it back to facts or excuse myself. If a client hints that I should hide a risk, then I will state it plainly and explain the mitigation. If a meeting has no agenda, then I will ask for one or I will skip with a polite note. If I am about to post something snarky, then I will wait 10 minutes and reread it. These are not grand gestures. They are policies you execute so you are not negotiating values with your mood. People often ask how to measure virtue without getting self-congratulatory. Keep it boring and precise. Count the moments you upheld a standard when compromise offered quick relief. You can jot a single line at day's end. Spoke up about scope risk even though it could make me look difficult. Returned a duplicate refund even though no one would have noticed. Declined an invite that clashed with my kid's recital. Gave full credit to a colleague in front of leadership. Stayed quiet and listened when I wanted to win the moment. Those lines are not for display. They are your receipt that you did the harder thing. Over weeks, the count goes up, and your identity stops being a slogan. It becomes a pattern you can trust. Let's apply this to a common work scene. You are in a planning meeting, timelines are tight, and someone suggests padding numbers to look more impressive. Courage means naming the risk of that approach in calm language. Justice means giving stakeholders the real estimate so they can make informed choices. Temperance means keeping your tone steady instead of sarcastic. Practical wisdom means proposing a staged rollout that gives an early win without lying about the rest. You might lose a bit of popularity in the moment. You gain trust from the people who matter, and you sleep better because you did not sell a fantasy. Consider another situation. A teammate delivers work that is below the standard and you are on deadline. You can do it yourself and resent them, or you can act inside the virtues. Courage is giving clear feedback now, not later. Justice is offering help in a way that respects their dignity rather than humiliating them. Temperance is controlling the urge to vent elsewhere. Practical wisdom is deciding how much to fix yourself versus what to coach, so the route improves. You might say, here are the 3 issues blocking us. Here is how I suggest you address them by tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon, and I will handle the integration if you need a hand after that. Direct, fair, contained. Money choices are moral choices too. If you run a small business and cash flow is tight, justice means paying contractors and staff when you said you would, or being upfront and specific if you cannot, with a date and a plan. Courage might be calling a client to ask for an early partial payment rather than pretending everything is fine. Temperance might be cutting a non-essential expense you enjoy instead of delaying someone else's livelihood. Practical wisdom might be moving to simpler tools to lower overhead without hurting quality. These moves protect your reputation, which is slow to build and fast to lose. In personal life, the same operating system works. Courage could be booking a medical check you have avoided. Justice could be splitting chores and emotional labor fairly rather than assuming someone else will handle them, because they always do. Temperance could be putting the phone away during dinner and honoring presence. Practical wisdom could be choosing an early bedtime before a big day rather than squeezing another episode. None of this needs a motivational speech. It needs small choices made on time. Virtues sometimes collide, and you will feel it. Telling the truth might hurt someone in the short term. Protecting someone might hide a fact others need. Temperance might suggest silence, while justice demands a voice. When that happens, put practical wisdom at the center and ask who is affected, what the time horizon is, and what harm you are actually avoiding or creating. Bias toward justice when others will pay the price for your comfort. Bias toward courage when fear is your main blocker. Bias toward temperance when your impulse is to self-indulge at someone else's expense. Then decide and own it. You can correct course later if new information comes in. If the word virtue feels heavy, translate it to standards. Define a few non-negotiables that make sense for your role. No dishonest gains. No gossip. No plagiarizing or cutting corners that would embarrass you if exposed. Fair credit and generous attribution. Tell the truth when it costs you, not just when it is easy. Stick to deadlines you set or renegotiate them early, not at the last minute. These standards are easier to keep if you write them once and look at them briefly each week. You are not trying to be perfect. You are trying to make misses rare and repairs fast. Repair is part of virtuous action. Integrity is not never slipping. It is how quickly you restore alignment after a miss. If you break a promise, acknowledge it plainly, explain without excuses, and make a new promise you can keep. If you snap at someone, apologize soon and in the same forum if the snap was public. If you fall into gossip, name it and pivot. This speed of repair keeps your relationships and your self-respect intact. It also makes people more willing to trust you, because they know you will correct yourself rather than double down. At work, you can install virtues into the way your team operates without preaching. Start meetings with clear owners and decisions rather than vague talk, which is wisdom and temperance in scheduling. Share wins by naming the people who actually did the work, which is justice. Keep retrospectives focused on what we will change next time, which is wisdom and courage instead of long blame sessions. Protect focus time, which is temperance at the organizational level, and it pays off in better output. Write decisions down so you are not relying on memory, which is wisdom again. The culture shifts from performance to performance with integrity, and morale usually follows. Personally, boundaries are where courage and temperance often meet. Saying no is hard, especially to people you like. A clear boundary stated early is kinder than a yes you cannot honor. You can keep it simple. I do not take calls after 7 in the evening. I cannot join that committee. My plate is full. I can help for 30 minutes on Thursday at 3 in the afternoon. You do not owe a dramatic explanation. Your job is to protect the commitments you already made. This protects your ability to do quality work and to show up for the people closest to you. Virtuous action also shows up in how you give and receive feedback. Courage is asking for it from people who will tell you the truth. Justice is offering it without using it as a weapon. Temperance is not defending yourself mid-feedback. Practical wisdom is implementing the parts that align with your standards and leaving the rest without resentment. A small technique helps. When you receive feedback, summarize back what you heard in 1 or 2 sentences and say thank you. Decide later what you will do with it. That pause prevents reflex justification and keeps relationships clean. Decision-making benefits when you tie virtues to time blocks. Choose a daily moment for each. A courage moment could be the first call of the day where you tackle a hard topic. A justice moment could be a weekly round of paying invoices and crediting contributors. A temperance moment could be a midday break without screens or sugar. A wisdom moment could be a short planning block where you pick the one thing that moves the week. Scheduling these makes the abstract real. You see them on your calendar, you do them, and you track them simply. Over time, the habit carries you even when motivation dips. One more practical tool is the pre-commitment of language. Keep a few sentences ready that express your virtues under stress, so you are not searching for words. For courage, you can say, "I see a risk we are not naming, and I want to put it on the table." For justice, you can say, "Credit here belongs to Maria for the analysis and to Ken for the implementation." For temperance, you can say, "I am stepping away from this thread for an hour to cool off and will reply with a proposal." For wisdom, you can say, "Given our deadline, the highest value next step is to ship the minimal version and iterate." These lines lower the activation energy to act well. Do not confuse virtue with rigidity. You can be firm in standards and flexible in tactics. If a plan changes, you do not break your word, you renegotiate it early. If a rule you made is causing unintended harm, you adjust it. Wisdom is guiding, not stubbornness. You will get some calls wrong. That is part of the job. The practice is to notice quickly, admit it, and update your approach. The humility to change based on new facts is itself a moral move. It helps to keep score privately, so you do not drift into signaling. At the end of a week, write a few lines about where each virtue showed up, where it did not, and what one change you will make next week. You might notice that courage lagged because you avoided a conversation. You set it for Tuesday morning and write a 3-point agenda. You might notice temperance slipped in late-night scrolling. You plug your phone in outside the bedroom and put a book by the bed. These are small, realistic adjustments, not vows you cannot keep. The benefits of living this way are quiet but strong. Colleagues, stop second-guessing your motives because you operate transparently. Friends and family know what to expect because your yes means yes and your no means no. Your own head is lighter because you are not carrying the weight of half-truths. You move faster because you are not wasting cycles on damage control. And when you need to take a stand on something that matters, you have a history with yourself that says you will act, even if your hands shake. If you are wondering where to begin without turning your life upside down, pick one moment tomorrow where you know you usually slip. Maybe it is the post-lunch slump, where temperance disappears into distractions. Maybe it is the weekly team call where courage fades and you let a risky assumption slide. Maybe it is your invoicing routine where justice gets loose because following up is awkward. Script the better move now. Put a small reminder where you will see it. Do it once, then do it again next week. That is how standards stop being slogans and become muscle memory. As you keep this up, you will notice that your choices align more often without a huge internal fight. You will also notice that you are less impressed by shortcuts that cost someone else, including your future self. You start to value the clean path, even when it is slower, because you like who you are when you take it. That is the point of virtuous action. It is not about looking good. It is about doing right in a way that is sustainable, contagious, and reliable. It turns windy days into workable days because your compass does not change with the breeze. You show up, you ask the hard questions, you act fairly, you restrain what needs restraining, and you choose the move that makes the most sense with the time you have. Then you repeat it, day after day, without a lot of fuss. Repeating clean standards day after day sets you up for the harder test, which is how you behave when the plan gets punched. That is where radical responsibility lives. It is not about taking the blame for everything. It is about owning your response to anything, especially when you did not cause it. The response is where your control starts and where your character is visible. When something goes wrong, The rule is simple and tough at the same time. No excuses, no blame migrations. Explain what happened plainly, fix what you can, and move before the story hardens into a grievance you start telling yourself over and over. This is not self-abuse, and it is not pretending harm is fine. If someone mistreats you or a system is unfair, responsibility does not mean calling that good. It means refusing to let the harm define what you do next. You decide your move instead of letting the situation decide for you. That decision is practical. You ask 3 questions after every problem. What did I control? What will I improve? What will I ignore? Then you tell someone your next step so you will actually do it. Publishing the step to a person who can hold you to it is the small twist that turns intention into action. Let's make those 3 questions useful. What did I control is a past tense audit. You look at the parts of the situation that were inside your reach. Maybe you sent a late invoice. Maybe you waited too long to escalate a risk. Maybe you skipped a check because you were in a rush. Or maybe you did everything you said you would and the issue still showed up. Either way, you name your share honestly, without beating yourself up. What will I improve is future tense and specific. You pick one change you can implement now. It might be a new checklist item, an earlier reminder, a clearer request, or a boundary you will state next time. What will I ignore is the sanity question. You decide which parts of the mess are outside your circle and will not get your attention. That could be other people's tone, rumors about motives, or outcomes you cannot control. Once you have those answers, you send a short note to a colleague, a manager, or a friend that says, "Here is what happened. Here is my part. Here is the step I am taking by a specific time." The point is not theater, it is accountability. Picture a vendor missing a delivery that pushes your project off schedule. You did not cause the delay, but you own the response. Your past tense audit says you relied on a verbal promise and did not get a written confirmation with penalties and a buffer. Your improvement is to immediately formalize future orders with clear dates and a fallback supplier. Your ignore list includes the vendor's excuses about their internal drama. You send your team a short update that names the slip, the new delivery date, your buffer plan, and the one decision you need from leadership if costs will change. No excuses, no venting, just reality and next steps. Now try a personal example. You come home irritated and snap at someone you care about. You did not cause the traffic or the stress at work. You did cause the tone you used. The responsible move is to own that slice quickly. You say out loud that your tone was off and you are sorry. You take 10 quiet minutes to reset before continuing the conversation. Then, when things are calm, you share a small plan for how you will avoid bringing heat home next time, like a decompression walk before you walk in or a 5-minute buffer in the car. You ignore the part of your mind that wants to explain for half an hour why you were justified. You repair fast, you change a habit, and you let the rest go. If you lose a job, responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for layoffs. It means you act on the levers you still have. On the same day, you update your resume, list people you will contact, block time for outreach, audit your expenses, and decide what temporary work is acceptable for a short run. You set a rule for how many applications or conversations you will do each weekday. You also schedule short recovery blocks so you do not burn out. You ignore gossip about why decisions were made and whether someone else got an easier ride. You put energy into a pipeline you can grow, not into a story that will keep you angry without paying your bills. Communication is the place where excuses hide, so rewrite the way you report problems. Replace blame language with a neutral status format. Say what happened in one sentence. Say what you did. Say the next step you will take by a clear time. And say what help you need, if any. You might write, "The integration failed at 11 in the morning during payment testing. I rolled back to the last stable build and documented the error codes, I will pair with Alex at 2 in the afternoon to fix the call, and I will post an update by 5 in the evening. No customer data was affected, and I do not need external help. This is not robotic, it is responsible. It makes you reliable under pressure. If you lead a team, model the habit in public. When a miss happens, name your part first, state the fix, and show the change in process. Keep the post-mortem focused on decisions and safeguards, not on personalities. Ask each person to answer the same 3 questions and to commit to one next step they own. Close the loop by checking that the changes actually shipped into real practice. Over time, people stop hiding bad news because they see that news leads to action rather than spectacle. One reason this posture works is that it frees up creative energy. When you stop outsourcing fault, you stop spending mental bandwidth on defense. That energy flows into experimentation and learning. You can try a new approach without fear of owning the outcome, because owning the response is your default anyway. It becomes easier to take smart risks, to share rough drafts earlier, and to adapt fast. The bottleneck is not protection of ego anymore. It is the work itself. There is a misunderstanding worth clearing. Responsibility does not mean staying in harmful situations. If someone is abusive or a workplace is toxic, owning your response might mean documenting incidents, talking to a trusted advisor, using formal channels, or leaving. It might mean contacting professionals. It does not mean absorbing mistreatment in silence. The difference is that you are acting to protect your future rather than rehearsing the harm endlessly without changing your environment. You are defining yourself by your next move, not by the damage. Set small response deadlines to keep momentum. Decide that within a short window after a setback, you will take one constructive step. The window can be minutes for minor issues and a day for serious ones. During that window, you can feel whatever comes up. Then you act. Send the email, book the appointment, draft the plan, call the person. The aim is not to rush grief or minimize pain. It is to anchor your identity in movement and to stop looping in stories that grow heavier with time. Some people like a metric called time to first constructive action. You do not need the label, but you can watch it. Notice how long it takes you from an event to your first useful step. Try to make that time shorter over weeks. It is a quiet competition with yourself. You do not win by skipping reflection. You win by trimming the unhelpful delay between knowing and doing. Handling feedback is part of radical responsibility. When feedback arrives, separate the signal from the noise. The signal is specific and actionable, like your brief was unclear in the second section or the example confused me. The noise is vague insult or projection. You take the signal, thank the person, and improve. You ignore the noise without dragging it around. If feedback is mixed, sample it the way you taste food at a market. Try a bite. If it helps, keep it. If not, set it down. This attitude lets you keep your standards while learning fast. Accountability makes the habit stick. Tell someone your next step and by when. It can be a 5-line note to a teammate, a quick message to a friend, or a short line in a shared doc. The content is simple. Here is what happened. Here is what I controlled. Here is what I will improve. Here is what I will ignore. And here is my next step by this time. Then follow through. If you miss, say so and reset the time. The point is to build a reputation with yourself that your word is current. In relationships, you can use the same frame after conflicts. After tempers cool, say what you own without bringing in what the other person did. Move to what you will do differently next time. Ask what they need from you. Say what you will ignore, like mind-reading their motives. If a boundary was crossed, state the boundary calmly and the consequence for crossing it again. Then act consistently. This is not about winning. It is about keeping the bond healthy or, if needed, ending it cleanly. Take care not to extend responsibility where it does not belong. You are not responsible for another adult's choices. You can influence, you can request, you can set boundaries, and you can leave. You cannot control. Radical responsibility stops at your skin and your commitments. That boundary keeps you from turning the practice into chronic self-blame. The test is simple. If an action is not yours to take, put it on the ignore list and return to what you can do. Small rituals help. After a rough day, write a short debrief. One sentence on what happened, one sentence on what you controlled, one on what you will improve, and one on what you will ignore. Add the next step with a date and the name of the person who knows about it. Close the notebook. Sleep. The next morning, do the step first if you can. This keeps your days from bleeding into each other without resolution. The speed of repair is a good signal that the practice is taking root. When you mess up, how quickly do you notice, own it, fix what you can, and restore trust? Try to make that faster. It is not about rushing apologies. It is about avoiding the extra day of avoidance that makes everything worse. A clean acknowledgement now is cheaper than an elaborate excuse later. On teams, cultivate a culture where the first question after a failure is, what will we do next? And the second is, what will we change in the system so this is less likely to happen again? If someone starts a blame migration, steer it back to actions. You can say, let us stay with what is in our control. That sentence changes the temperature in a room. Over time, people bring problems earlier because they know the group will help, not hunt. You will have days when your old habits win. You will complain, you will stew, you will delay. When you catch it, do a reset that takes a few minutes. Breathe slowly for a short stretch to settle your body. Drink water. Write the 3 questions, answer them in simple words, and take one step. Then return to your day. The reset is not a performance. It is a practical way to stop the spiral. There is a long-term effect that is worth naming. When you keep practicing this posture, hits make you stronger because each one triggers a disciplined process that ends with a small improvement. That is what people mean when they say anti-fragile. It is not a buzzword. It is the plain idea that stress, followed by repair and learning, raises your capacity. The opposite posture, where every hit becomes a grievance and no changes happen, leaves you brittle. If you want a lightweight place to begin, choose one area of your life to run this for 2 weeks. It might be work incidents, fitness, or family logistics. Every time a snag occurs, run the 3 questions, tell someone your next step, and do it. At the end of the period, look back at what changed. You will probably see a drop in the time you spend complaining, an increase in small fixes you kept, and a little more calm when things break. That is progress you can feel, not slogans. The last point is about dignity. Owning your response does not make you a doormat. It gives you posture. You can walk into hard rooms without shrinking because you trust yourself to act cleanly no matter who caused the mess. You can refuse to carry stories that ask you to give up your power. You can face outcomes you did not want and still show up with a plan. It is quieter than the usual drama, and it is more durable. You become the person who moves first on what matters and lets the rest pass. That steadiness is visible, and it changes how people treat you. More importantly, it changes how you treat yourself. You are not waiting for perfect conditions or perfect fairness. You are building forward from whatever is on the table, and you are doing it with your hands on the levers you actually control. Once you are in the habit of choosing your next move instead of narrating the mess, the question becomes how to hold your center so you can keep doing it on hard days. That is where a strong inner base matters. Think of it as a set of daily rituals, clear standards, and earned self-respect that travel with you, so your mood does not swing with headlines, opinions, or random wins and losses. You are not withdrawing from life. You are building a foundation that lets you walk into volatile rooms with your dignity intact and your focus available. Start by aligning your day with the values you actually care about, not the ones you post about. This is very simple and very boring in the best way. A short morning check-in to plan your day, a block of focused work where you do the real thing before you touch the noise, time for your body to move, a small dose of reading or study that grows your judgment, and an evening reflection to close loops. None of these blocks need to be long. 5 quiet minutes to plan, 40 minutes to focus, 20 minutes to move, 15 minutes to read, and 5 minutes to review will change your baseline in a month if you keep them. The sizes can flex. The point is that these blocks happen even when you are traveling, tired, or annoyed. They are part of who you are, not weather-based options. Your morning check-in is where you set direction. Write the one result that would make today count if everything else fell apart. Write the one relationship move that would actually matter, like a check-in with a teammate or a call to a family member. Pick your start time for the first deep block and guard it. If you are tempted to stack tasks, remember that a single finished thing beats 5 half-done ones. You are not trying to clear the inbox. You are trying to move something that matters. The focused work block is where your craft lives. Close extra tabs, put your phone in another room, write the first sentence, push the first change, or build the first unit. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Set a timer if it helps. When the block ends, stand up and take a breath. You can do messages after that. This simple rhythm shifts you from reacting to leading, and that shift is the whole point of building a core. Physical training is not about chasing records. It is about telling your nervous system that you can carry your own weight in a world that throws weight at you. Choose something you can repeat most days. A brisk walk, mobility work, basic strength moves, a ride, a class. Keep it safe and steady. You are protecting a habit you will still want in 10 years, not sprinting toward a short-term challenge you will quit next month. Reading is the quiet builder of judgment. You do not need a stack of classics. Mix material that sharpens your craft, broadens your view, and grounds your ethics. Read slowly and take notes you can find later. It might be a chapter, an essay, a paper, or a short case. The rule is that you feed your mind something better than the algorithm at least a few times a week. It shows up in your decisions whether you notice it or not. The evening reflection is where you protect your progress. You jot what you finished, the moment you are proud of, the slip you will repair tomorrow, and one thank you you will send. Keep it light. This is not a diary of feelings. It is a 4-line record that teaches your brain which actions matter and which you will avoid repeating. A strong inner base does not mean never missing. You will break your own rules. The speed of repair is your real metric. When you violate a standard, fix it quickly and in the right place. If you misstate a fact, send the correction in the same thread. If you snapped at someone in a meeting, apologize to the group, not just in private. If you promised a deadline you cannot hit, inform people early with a new date and the reason in plain words. Integrity is not about never slipping. It is about short restoration cycles. To keep outside noise from punching holes in your base, curate your inputs. That starts with your phone and your feeds. Decide when you will check news and social updates, and keep those windows short. Turn off non-essential notifications. If a source consistently stirs anger without adding usable information, cut it. This is not about living in a bubble. It is about protecting your attention so you can spend it where it works. Add better inputs on purpose. High-quality newsletters, long-form articles, books, and conversations with people who make you think are worth far more than 100 hot takes. Relationships can strengthen or corrode your base. Choose proximity to people who challenge you to be better without trying to control you. That might be a colleague who gives direct feedback, a friend who will tell you when you are off, or a mentor who cares about your craft more than your image. Likewise, set distance from those who pull you toward drama. You do not need a dramatic exit. You can quietly decline invitations that lead to trouble, answer less often, and redirect conversations toward productive topics. The rule is simple. If the cost of staying close is betraying your standards, step back. A default polite no is the easiest way to protect the citadel you are building. Most overcommitment comes from awkwardness, not malice. Prepare a few sentences you can use without thinking. I cannot take this on and still keep my current commitments. Thank you for asking, and I need to decline. That does not burn bridges. It keeps promises you already made to others and to yourself. You can suggest an alternative if you have one, but you do not owe unpaid project management for every request. The people who respect boundaries will stay, and the people who do not would have cost you more later. A practical trick is to design a minimum viable day for chaos. It is the smallest version of your rituals that still counts. Maybe it is a 2-minute plan, a 20-minute focus block, a short walk, 5 pages of reading, and a 3-line review. When travel, illness, or deadlines get loud, you drop to this floor rather than dropping the whole system. It keeps your identity intact and makes restarting easy. Long streaks are fragile. Short floors are sturdy. Money pressure and scarcity tactics can tilt you. Build simple rules so they cannot. Keep a modest buffer in your accounts if you can. Decide your no-go lines ahead of time. If a client asks for free work in exchange for exposure, you can answer that your policy is to be paid in money or aligned equity, not in vague promises. If a deal asks you to hide risk, you state that your standard is full disclosure with mitigation. If a job requires you to act against your core values, you prepare an exit plan before you burn out. These are not dramatic moves. They are lines that protect your reputation and your sleep. Your environment should reflect your aims. Put your tools where you use them. Keep your desk clear enough to start in a minute. Put exercise gear by the door the night before. Keep a water bottle filled. Place your book where your phone used to sit at night. Small placement choices save willpower. The less you fight your space, the more you can focus on work worth doing. When you face high stakes, your base is what holds your posture. In a negotiation, you can be firm on principles and flexible on terms. You say clearly what you need, what you can offer, and where you cannot bend. You do not fill silence with concessions. You take breaks if emotions spike. You ask for time to think. Because your identity is not at risk, you can walk away if a deal threatens your standards. That calm often improves outcomes because the other side sees you are anchored. In leadership, a stable center builds trust. People watch whether your mood controls the room or whether your principles do. If your decisions swing with praise or bad news, your team feels unsafe. If your decisions follow clear criteria, even unpopular calls land better. Share the reasoning behind choices. Hold the same rules for yourself that you hold for others. Admit when you are wrong and change course in daylight. That consistency is rare, and people will give you the benefit of the doubt because they have seen you repair quickly and publicly. Love and friendship benefit too. A strong base lets you show care without disappearing. You can listen fully because you are not calculating your image. You can set boundaries without shouting because your worth is not on trial. You can forgive faster because you are not stockpiling small offenses to use as leverage later. It is easier to be generous when you are not running an internal deficit. Travel and disruption test any system. A travel kit for your base helps. Save a stripped-down morning and evening routine in a note, including a few bodyweight moves, a short breathing sequence, and a reading cue. Keep a tiny notebook so you can plan and review when Wi-Fi is bad. Carry earbuds and a timer for focus blocks in noisy places. When you land, do your minimum viable day, not a hero version. You will feel the ground return under your feet. When you break your own rules, and you will, avoid drama. Notice it quickly, name it, and restart. If you skipped a week of reading, Pick a short article today. If you ignored your planning, write a 2-line plan and begin. If you let inputs get chaotic, do a 24-hour reset with no social feeds and only necessary messages. Each restart is a vote for the identity you are growing. The votes add up. Be careful not to turn your base into a wall. The point is not isolation. The point is sovereignty, which means you can engage deeply without being captured. If a friend needs you, you change your plan and show up. If a crisis hits at work, you drop to the floor version of your routine and give your best presence. If new evidence contradicts your view, you update it. Flexibility is a sign of strength, not weakness, when it is anchored in standards. When you are tempted to chase recognition, remember the equation you control. You can choose effort, honesty, craft quality, and helpfulness. Let the spotlight follow or not. Praise is pleasant, but it is not fuel. Use it as information if it points to where your work landed. Do not let it rewrite your plan. The same goes for criticism. Sample it for data. If it asks you to betray your craft, set it down. Your base holds because it is built on behaviors you can do today, not on other people's reactions. A weekly audit keeps the structure alive. Ask what strengthened your base and what eroded it. Did your morning plan happen most days? Did you protect at least one deep work block? Did you move your body? Did you read something that changed a choice? Did you repair a miss quickly? Did you say no when a yes would have cost your standards? Write quick answers and one adjustment for the next week. Keep it simple and repeatable. This is maintenance, not spectacle. If you want a concrete example of the base in action, picture a week where a key project slips, a family obligation pops up, and you catch a cold. Without a base, you spin. With a base, you scale down to your minimums. You run a short morning plan that centers on the one lever that will steady the project. You schedule a small but protected block during your best energy window for that lever. You move your body gently to clear your head. You read a few pages at night to keep your mind from drifting into endless scroll. You communicate cleanly with your team and your family about what you can and cannot do this week. You repair any broken promises fast. By the weekend, the project is back in motion, your relationships are intact, and your health is improving. That is not a dramatic triumph. It is what a durable base buys you. There is one more layer that often gets overlooked. Protect your attention as if it were a finite resource, because it is. Batch shallow work. Group messages into a few windows. Write decisions down so they do not haunt your mind at midnight. Use a capture tool for ideas so you do not try to remember everything. Create quiet zones in your day where nothing can reach you. You do not need to be reachable every minute to be reliable. You need to be reachable when it matters and deeply focused when it counts. Over time, your base changes how you feel about risk. You stop waiting for certainty because you trust your ability to adapt. You launch earlier because you know how to iterate. You negotiate harder because you do not fear walking away. You let compliments wash over you without steering your work. You hear criticism without getting hooked. You can love people with your whole attention because you are not guarding a fragile persona. From the outside, this looks like calm. On the inside, it feels like space. If this sounds like a lot, remember that you can start tiny. Tomorrow morning, write one line for what would make the day count. Protect one block where you do the real thing first. Move your body for a short stretch. Read a page. Write 3 lines at night. Say one clean number. Repeat that for a week and adjust the sizes. The structure will find its shape around your life. What you are building is not a display case. It is a working core. It lets you step into stress without losing your posture, take feedback without losing your voice, and handle praise without losing your grip. It keeps you steady when scarcity and manipulation try to pull you off center. It is made of small, repeatable moves that quietly add up. From that base, you can push hard on work that matters, show up well for people you love, and take real risks with a calm face. That is strength no one can steal because you rebuild it every single day. And to keep that core steady when the room starts clapping or booing, you have to decide how you relate to other people's reactions. External approval can pull you off center faster than almost anything. Insults can do the same. If praise lifts you too high or blame drops you too low, your work starts steering toward reactions instead of standards. The clean fix is indifference to both applause and insult, not ice cold, not cynical, just a steady habit of judging yourself by metrics you control and treating everything else as weather. Here is the posture in plain terms. Measure yourself by effort, honesty, craft quality, and helpfulness. Those are actions you can do today. Compliments are pleasant to hear, but they do not change your plan. Criticism can contain useful data, but it does not set your worth. When you shift from "do they like me" to "did I uphold my standards" and "did I add value today," you make yourself hard to jerk around. This is simple to practice if you make it part of your daily rhythm. In the morning, write a line about how you will show effort, how you will be honest in your communication, what one craft detail you will get right, and how you will help someone. At night, ask whether you did those things. Keep the check short and concrete. If you did them, the day counted, even if the internet was quiet or someone took a shot at you. If you did not, that is your work for tomorrow. This internal scoreboard is not about ego. It is about alignment. The next piece is calibrating whose feedback matters. Not all opinions should carry the same weight. You want to listen closely to people with domain knowledge, people affected by your work, and people who share your standards even when they disagree with your choices. A trusted peer, a customer who uses the thing you build, a manager who has shipped similar work, a friend who cares more about your growth than your image, these are good sources. Random comments from strangers, vague crowd energy, or praise that asks you to betray your craft should pass through without landing. This is not arrogance, it is triage. When feedback arrives, separate tone from content. Someone might deliver a sharp message wrapped in a rough tone. Strip the tone and look for the actionable part. If the content points to a real issue, fix it. If there is no action in it, set it down. A useful question is, what would I actually do differently because of this? If the answer is nothing specific, you can move on. If the answer is clear, thank them and improve the work. That habit keeps you learning without letting every voice into your head. Compliments deserve the same discipline. Accept them briefly. Say thank you. Capture any signal in them, like which part of your work helped someone, and then put them away. Do not build the day around chasing another hit. Chasing praise leads to safe work and shaky identity. You start picking topics and styles that gain easy approval instead of doing the hard things that matter. The odd thing is that letting go of praise often improves your work and brings more of it later, but that is not the point. The point is autonomy. You can install small guardrails to make this real. Create windows when you allow yourself to check external metrics. For example, once late in the morning and once late in the afternoon, you review analytics or comments for a short block. Outside those windows, you work. If you can, hide like counts or view numbers from your normal screen so you do not get hooked by them unconsciously. If you need to watch performance for professional reasons, treat those numbers like speed signs, not like a mirror. They inform pacing. They do not define you. There is a practice called silent release that helps. Deliver work without announcing it and let it travel on its own for a bit. Publish the article and skip the self-promotion for a day. Ship the feature quietly to a small cohort. Send the report to the people who need it without broadcasting it to everyone. Watch how you feel. If you notice a rush of anxiety, that is feedback about how attached you are to validation. Keep doing silent releases here and there until the anxiety calms down. What you are teaching yourself is that the value sits in the work, not in how loudly you point at it. Another move is to decline rewards that would force misalignment. This might look like turning down a sponsorship that asks you to exaggerate claims, or a role that pays well but requires you to hide uncomfortable facts, or a speaking slot that wants a take you cannot stand behind. Saying no to shiny, misaligned opportunities strengthens your center. It proves to you that your compass is not for sale. You do not have to make a speech about values. A clean decline is enough. At work, approvals and reviews are part of the job, so here is how to stay steady. Enter a performance review with your internal metrics written down and your evidence ready. Effort looks like clear documentation of what you attempted and shipped. Honesty looks like owning misses and how you repaired them. Craft quality looks like examples of improved processes, code, design, or communication. Helpfulness looks like ways you elevated others, reduced confusion, or trained someone. When the review ends, extract the specific actions you will take and schedule them. Leave the rest in the room. If a review asks you to trade your standards for optics, raise the conflict calmly and propose a way to meet the goal without the trade. If that is not possible, you have information about fit and you can decide with a clear head. Social media is an obvious trap. If you create there, protect your focus. Batch your posting and your responses. Write your work offline, post it, and then step away. When you return, sort comments into 3 piles in your mind. One is data you can use to improve. One is encouragement you can appreciate without changing course. One is noise. You respond to the first, you thank the second with a brief note if you want, and you leave the third alone. Arguing with hecklers rarely changes minds and always drains time. There is also the opposite trap, using indifference as a shield to avoid feedback. You do not want that either. Detachment from validation is not detachment from learning. You can ask for direct critiques from people you respect and invite them to be specific. You can run user tests and watch where people stumble. You can track real outcomes that show whether your work helped. The difference is that you are using feedback to refine craft, not to feed your mood. A simple mental reset helps when praise or blame spikes. Before reading comments or opening a review, rate yourself privately against your standards in a sentence. I did the work I said I would. I told the truth. I cared about quality. I tried to be helpful. Then read what comes. If compliments match your own view, nice. If they overshoot, enjoy and let them go. If criticism points to a gap you already saw, fix it. If it points to a gap you missed, say thank you and update. If it is just heat, drop it. Returning to your own sentence after you read can steady your hands. Teams can normalize this stance. Agree on internal metrics for quality and ethics. Celebrate the behavior that leads to good results, not just the splashy outcome. When a launch gets love, you name the choices and routines that enabled it. When something flops, you praise the honest attempt, study the miss, and iterate. You limit public victory laps because they create pressure for the next project to be big rather than good. You also protect people from public pile-ons when errors occur, focusing on repair and system changes. This creates a culture where dignity is not hostage to the latest wave of opinion. Parents and partners can practice it too. Compliment effort and integrity, not status marks. Tell a child you are proud they kept a promise or stuck with a problem, not just proud that they won a prize. Tell a partner you noticed how they handled a hard moment with grace, not only how they looked at an event. These choices build internal compasses in the people around you, and they reinforce your own. Anxious checking is a habit you can break with friction. Remove apps from your home screen. Move metrics behind a couple of taps. Turn off notifications for likes and follows. If your job requires tracking performance, set a calendar reminder that opens the dashboard at specific times and close it when the time ends. Small barriers interrupt the reflex to keep pulling the slot machine. The goal is not to deny that results matter. The goal is to stop the results from owning your attention. Validation also sneaks in through comparison. An easy counter is to define your season's inputs clearly. How many deep work blocks you will do per week, how many drafts you will finish, how many customers you will talk to, how many training sessions you will complete. Track those inputs and compare yourself to your past weeks. Let other people's seasons be theirs. This gives you a sense of progress you do not have to borrow from anyone. Sometimes detaching from validation will cost you short-term visibility. You might post less often, hype less, or decline certain events. To stay sane, replace the lost buzz with a clean cadence. Weekly publish cycles, monthly check-ins with mentors, quarterly reviews of your craft. Cadence is a healthy substitute. It feeds momentum without feeding addiction to reaction. If you work in a field where branding matters, you can still keep your center. Be clear on your promise to the audience, which is what you will consistently deliver. Then deliver it. Say no to tactics that grow reach at the cost of trust. Share process and learning, not just wins. Own mistakes in public when it helps the audience learn. These choices build a reputation that lasts longer than any spike in attention. There will be edge cases. If a powerful person misrepresents your work or attacks your character, you may need to respond. Keep it factual and short. State the point of disagreement, provide evidence, and restate your values. Avoid theater. Your response should help neutral observers understand, not feed a fight. Then return to your work. Do not let battles become your brand. Over time, indifference to praise and blame brings a few quiet benefits. You recover hours that used to vanish into refreshing and worrying. You say bolder truths because you are not bargaining with imaginary juries. You experiment more because the cost of a miss is learning, not shame. You enjoy good news without needing it to last. You hear criticism without spiraling. You build friendships that are less transactional because you are not trying to harvest approval from every interaction. If you want to try this with training wheels, run a no validation morning for a week. Until noon, do not check metrics, comments, or messages that are about how your work is received. Use that time for making, shipping, and helping. Check reactions after lunch, process them quickly, and return to action. Watch how your mood and output change. Most people find their mornings get quieter and their afternoons get sharper because they are not starting the day by handing their nervous system to strangers. Language helps. Swap like me for did I help? Swap is this popular for is this true and useful? Swap will they approve for will I respect this decision in a year? These small replacements steer your attention toward what you can do with your own hands. They also make it easier to sleep, because your brain is not waiting for an external verdict to declare the day good or bad. Keep a short log of days you stayed with your internal metrics despite loud reactions. Write a sentence about the action you took that matched your standards, and a sentence about a validation hook you declined. Maybe you shipped a tough fix without a tweet. Maybe you turned down a panel that wanted hot takes instead of substance. Maybe you replied to a harsh comment once with useful info, and then disengaged. These are real reps. After a few weeks, you will see the pattern of someone who chooses their path and lets the crowd move how it moves. This stance will not make you a robot. You can still enjoy kind words. You can still learn from sharp critics. The difference is that neither becomes your master. You are guided by a set of inner measures that you can meet on a rainy Tuesday with no audience. That is freedom. It is also the only stable base for long-term excellence. Applause fades. Outrage fades. The body of work you build and the people you help do not. If you do nothing else, try this simple loop for a while. Each morning, commit to effort, honesty, craft quality, and helpfulness in one line. Each evening, answer whether you upheld them and write the next small action. During the day, Treat compliments as weather and criticism as samples. Choose whose feedback gets a seat at your table and let the rest go. Deliver work quietly now and then to remind yourself where the value lives. Say no to rewards that bend your spine. Keep going. The more you practice, the more you will notice a calm that does not depend on the day's noise. You will still feel things. You just will not be steered by every gust. That calm saves energy for the real work and for the people who count on you. And from there, your best chances of doing something you are proud of go up, not because you aimed at applause, but because you aimed at the work and let the score take care of itself.